Okay, so we are going to start. And so the title is here on the screen. Actually, what we decided to do with Philippe is a SWOT analysis. It's a very simple approach on where we are. And as you see, I like this picture. It's really what we talked about yesterday, the relationship between the scientists in the labs or in the field, in healthcare, and the policymakers. And I really think this picture is a good representation of the reality of the truth. And so, how do we proceed? Yeah, just a couple of word introduction. Yeah. C'est un numéro de claquette. So, yeah. So, as you know, but this is only for the people which are not French. So French has this particularity in the European landscape to have two networks, which are, can you put not this one, not the other one, but the third one? Yeah. Yeah, so we have this particularity that LTSER in France is represented by two national research infrastructure. It's not only one. And the reason is, and these two infrastructures are OSCAR and Zone Atelier. And the reason is that OSCAR is a network, as I explained yesterday, which was born mainly based on this program CRITEX, and is capitalizing, so to say, on this critical zone initiative, which is an international initiative in which the French community has been involved from the earlier beginning. Basically, the critical zone initiative is people doing earth sciences which are coming up to the surface, so to say. And so they're meeting with another community in France which has been doing observation for a very long period of time that was mentioned yesterday several times. And we had example of the kind of work which is presently doing in the Zone Atelier network, which is the equivalent of the LTER or LTSER with regards to the European language in France. And so the ministry told us, your two networks, OSCAR and Zone Atelier network, should be the mirror of the European S3 project LTSER. And just to remind you that, because yesterday the pronunciation was not the good one by most of the people. It's not ILTER, it's LTSER, okay? And if you want, we can make this pronunciation exercise together here. It's LTSER and not ILTER. It's not infrastructure, it's a real infrastructure. It's sites, okay? And so the issue, if it's an issue, in France was to try to, use the wealth of the existing networks to converge towards something which is adapted to the European landscape. And so we tried with Philippe to make a SWOT analysis, which I'm going to put here. Yeah. And I'm going to talk about the strengths and the weaknesses, and then Philippe is going to talk about the opportunities and the threats. That's okay, Philippe? Mm-hmm. Did I forget something?
No, you're perfect.
Okay, so let's start with the strength. So we have, in general, very high-profile research communities, very good scientists on both the Zone Atelier and OSCAR sites, very with regards to the conventional metrics on research, very highly cited studies, very well-known research scientists in socio-ecology and in critical zone science. So we are really starting from there. The second point is that our country has invested a lot in the long-term observations. And I like to take this example from the Strengbar Basin in the Vosges Mountain. It's a catchment which was instrumented back in the 90s in order to monitor, but not only to monitor, to understand what was happening with regards to acid rain. And this is, for example, here on this diagram, a record of the sulfate concentration in the stream as a function of time. you have to know, just what you have to know is that the sulfate is only coming from the atmosphere. There is no sulfate in the rock. And so everything, all the sulfate which is in the stream is indicating something on the atmospheric deposition. And you see that the sulfate concentration has steadily decreased, meaning that the atmosphere has been improved in quality. But you also see, which is the effect of European policy, because the sulfate was coming from the European industry, which has been delocalized to China. and you also see that the signal is not simple, okay? It's full of peaks, it's full of waves, etc. There is a lot to understand in that signal, and the talk that Jenny gave yesterday on the high frequency measurement of chemical elements in river water exactly give you the same impression that we have a lot to learn by looking at these long-term high-frequency chronicles. So this is one example, but we have observatories in France which have been observing the environment for 60 years. For example, the Orgeval, not far from here, was launched 60 years ago. So it's a wealth to have this long-term observation. Do we have a picture of the persona picture? Yeah, we have a, how do you say, Lou? It's a corp? No, it's not a corp. A core. A what? A corps. We have a state employee corps, which is a physicien du globe, which was created by Louis XIV a long time ago. And this is one example of Marie-Claire Pierret, which is not with us today. She's a leader of the PI of the site I've been talking before. She's physicienne du globe, and what means that his duty is to do 1/3 of teaching, 1/3 of research, and 1/3 dedicated of his time dedicated to observation. And I think France and China are the only countries in the world to have this kind of position, life position, in which part of your duty is to observe the Earth. Okay, and that's really a wealth, and we need to be aware of that. What else? No.
Which one do you?
So where am I? And so another strength that was presented yesterday, and so we're not going to comment on that, in the Terraforma project, which has been launched. Laurent and Arnaud are the PI of this project, which is associating the two communities, Zone Atelier and Oscar. And if we look back to the history, Oscar was created because of the CRITEX program associated the two communities. I explained that yesterday, and we strongly hope that Terraforma, which is associating two communities, is going to have a really transformative role in the sense of giving birth to a community, a new community of young researchers, not knowing the history, basically. Forgetting about the history. Okay, so this is the strengths. We have a number of other strengths, but we wanted to limit us to 4 items per on that diagram. And so I'm coming to the weaknesses. Weaknesses. Maybe I'm going to start by the end. No, okay. So yeah, can you come back on this? So with François Mercier, which is here, and Isabelle, we have tried to invent a representation of our observatories, long-term observatories. So it's only for Oscar, the Oscar network. And we came up with what we call the Oscar tree, in French, Oscarbre, but you cannot play with the words in English, Oscar tree, which is basically the phylogenetic tree of observatories. So how is it built? Is it built in 2 parts? So the central part, which is the green part, is institutional. Or another way to say it is communities that have made lobbying work at the CNRS level, essentially at the CNRS level, to get recognized as a community and to have labelized, I'm not going into the details, labelized networks and not sites. And so you see that we have networks which have been labelized by institutions on land surface, observation, peatland, aquifers, this is the H+ network, karst, which is different from the aquifers, and don't ask me why, but the karst network is not the same as the aquifer network, so you really see that it's an institutional problem. You know, it's not because this is the same reservoir, this is a deep critical zone, basically. Then we have a network on the cryosphere, which is associating observation on glaciers and permafrost, etc. And then when you go to the watershed compartments, you don't have a single network. You have watersheds which have been labelized, so to say, individually. So the green part of the OSCAR has nothing to see with, how to say, the reality of the critical zone. It's a pure institutional thing. And I liked the way yesterday Daniel presented his triangle, the research, the teaching, and the institution. And this is really, the green part here is really about institution. And then the rest of the OSCAR arbre representation has to see with the scales. So the larger here the circle, the smaller the scale, okay? And each point, each cycle or pi is represented a site. So for example, if you look at that site here, which belongs to the network on karst, I'm not able to read it, Larzac, okay? Larzac site, it's a site, it's an instrumented site. So if you want to know how much instrumented sites we have, you have to count the number of pies on the OSCAR. And so the Larzac Observatory is sampling, so to say, a surface area which is about 10 to the minus 2 square kilometer, right? Which is the surface area that is observed, basically. And the different compartments of the critical zone, and so we're very close to the LTSER compartments, atmosphere, biomass, ice, when you have ice, soil, deep water, surface water, soil water are color-coded, so to say. So when you have all the compartments which are monitored, you have the most colored pie on that diagram. So this is a representation, I'm not going to go into the details, but which is again associating the institutional point of view and the fact that our observatories are designed according to scales, nested scales. So why is it a weakness? Why is it a weakness? It's a weakness because these different observatories haven't been labeled or recognized by the same research institutions. And the research institutions have labeled not sites, but networks, okay? And so when you want, in a European perspective, to identify sites at the level 2, for example, not to talk about sites at the level 1, then you have to pick up a particular pie on the diagram and decide that this site is going to be a candidate to the LTSER infrastructure because it's having a whole system approach. In other words, on the OSCAR representation, the most colorful pies here. But it's difficult to do because what is visible from an institutional point of view is networks labelized by different research organizations and not sites. Okay, so we have had an approach, which is the network approach, labelized by different national research organizations, but we didn't have a site approach, so to say. And I have a diagram. So we are starting from there, and we want to go there, basically, if we decide we want to go there. And so this is the LTSER situation where we will have to identify sites at the level 2, sites at the level 1, eventually, level 3, and the platform, a socio-ecological platform. And we are far from being able to do that because we have this fragmentation, institutional fragmentation of the landscape that we inherited from this long history with different national research organizations that didn't talk to each other, basically. Okay? For example, some catchments have been labelized by the National Agronomical Research Institute, and most of the time, and the situation is becoming better and better, but most of the time, there were no discussion with other sites, catchment sites, labelized by other national research institutions. So we need a significant breakthrough effort to pass from that, which is a former situation, to the new situation that we need to reach if we want to comply with the European dimension. So this is a weakness, and related to this is a difficulty to cover all the compartments which are requested by LTSER, by the standard observation. And Isabelle did a lot of work recently on a diagram that is going to be released, if not already released, soon. So you have, on the x-axis, this is the sites, the different sites. And this is a number of measured variables currently measured, classified according to the different compartments. So the atmosphere, the biosphere, the geosphere, the hydrosphere, and the sociospheres, which are the spheres on which the LTSER design categorization of sites relies. And you do see that, so it's here an absolute number of variables, and this is percentages. And this diagram on the right is giving you the same information. One means 100% of the variable which are the variable category A in LTSER are measured. Okay? So you see that for this site, which is, I think, Oradea site, is that true? Yeah. Oradea plus the site of the Eddy Tower OSR, 100% of the atmospheric variables required by LTSER are measured. So we're good. Okay? But if you look at the geosphere, the biosphere, and the hydrosphere, and the worst case is the sociosphere, we are far from being able to give in a database all the data which are required by the European infrastructure. And probably the weakest part is the biosphere. And if you look at the green here area in that diagram, you see that this is a domain, this is the area where we have the least variable measured, okay? And the reason why is that are we in such situation? Can you come back on the Oscar tree? The reason is that there is no ecological observatories that have been labelized in the green part of the Oscar. Why? Because the labelization process in none of the institutions that are labelizing the observation, ecology was recognized as labelized variables. Okay, and I'm going much more straightforward. At INSU, which is a national institute which is labelizing the variable, there is no ecology. Because the ecology is another department at INE, and INE doesn't have this labelization process. So we don't have in France any observatory in which ecological variables have been labelized by any kind of organization. This is really stupid. Really stupid. And now the situation is such that we have this, we have this diagram where we have no ecological observation. Okay, and so this is something we need to improve, okay? We need to have ecological observation in the so-called Oscar sites, otherwise we won't be able to apply to the European LTSER infrastructure. Okay? Yes, I'm concluding. We lack personnel at the site level. if we want to say, okay, this site is going to apply to LTSER, we need at least a couple, a site manager, which is a scientist, and we need an executive engineer or technological personnel, which is taking in charge all the experimental aspects. And for a number of sites, we are also very far from being able to put our data in the good format, which is a European format. And I'm finishing with the two.
Thank you very much, Jérôme. You were quite talkative on the current situation and the past, even if you are representing the future, near future of LTSER, at least the contribution of France. I'm gonna talk about the next steps for our national network of sites, even if I'm more a person of the past, because I was NC coordinator before Jérôme. So I'm gonna pick some messages for the opportunities and the threats. The first message to convey is that LTSER is really a catalyst for developing this whole system approach, and we try to demonstrate, to show this for the French contribution. And what you have here is the outcome of quite a long process, at least 2-year-long process. So in which we asked colleagues to candidate somehow to the LTSER labeling, and to propose projects, research projects and observation projects to contribute to this future network of LTSER sites on LTSER platforms for France, okay? And so the result was a list of 6 to 7 projects, from Brittany to Jura, number 2, to Alps, French Alps, number 3, the Mediterranean area, number 4, south of Toulouse, number 5, and Plaine-et-Val de Sèvres, number 6. So in each case, we have in hands a document which is more or less a kind of preparatory phase for the labeling, the forthcoming labeling process in LTSER. So this is really an opportunity, because in these documents we have a series of very interesting case studies where we have very good questions that call for a whole system approach. And I would like to just to illustrate one example from a project I know quite well, from the French Alps. Maybe the next slide. In the French Alps, we have this proposition of a platform focusing on geosciences, biodiversity sciences and social sciences in relation with societal questions, especially snow coverage, pastoralism. And just to elaborate a little bit, we need, I am a plant ecologist, so I'm working on biodiversity, patterns and structure and dynamics, and I really need collaboration with guys from geosciences and especially snow specialists, because in the mountains, the climate really experienced by plants, by the living organism, is completely dependent on the snow cover duration. So I need to have a good representation, a good model of snow cover duration in this ecosystem to understand what the plants are really experiencing as climate. And so on this left diagram here, you see the growing season length. So how much warm are you experiencing during a season? The first scenario on the top is when you are just accounting for air temperature, as it is measured in meteorological station. And the low scenario is when you are accounting for the snow cover. So the difference along an elevational gradient is much steeper when you are accounting for snow, because when you are going up, you have more snow, so you are less, the growing season is shorter, okay? So this is the first point. And also you have a variance, much higher variance in the second case, because depending on the topography, the snow cover duration could be really different. So you are adding a lot of heterogeneity in the climate, the local climate really experienced by living organisms. And we need the collaboration with snow scientists to capture that at the right resolution, spatial and temporal resolution. So this is one of numerous example where we need this collaboration between geosciences and biodiversity sciences. And on the right, you have the example of the impact of this kind of observation and research on the services, the ecosystem services, because the productivity of these grasslands, which means pastoral resources, is also dependent on the snow cover duration. So there is a kind of observation from really accurate and fine resolution observation up to the evaluation of ecosystem services that are really important for our landscape and our territory. So this is one example, and there are many others in these projects that we have already constituted. The next, sorry. So this is the first 2 points on the opportunities. So this whole system approach that we aim to develop in these sites. We have already talking about Terraforma, and there is an opportunity to consider this project at the European level, not only at the French level. So this is a challenge, and I don't know if we will follow this track, but it is a possibility, an opportunity. And also I would like also to mention that somehow contributing to LTSER is a way to contribute to the European research area. Because we as Europeans, I think we need to develop, to strengthen our collaboration with other countries for all these questions related to environmental crises and so on, and not to be dependent on other initiatives, other countries to do so. So I really feel, and I know that Jérôme is also convinced, that we need to strengthen this collaboration, especially at a time where we are facing a lot of crises. And frankly, it's really also, to me at least, a strong driver of my engagement in LTSER. Now for the threats. Maybe the most important, the most important is in an ideal world, like for example, I will take this example of the large Hadron Collider in CERN, okay? This is a very large infrastructure used by physicists, particle physicists. There is a virtual circle in which we have positive feedbacks between a research network on the left and a research infrastructure on the right. Okay, so the research infrastructure is providing all the services needed for doing a high-profile research, okay, and the researchers are contributing to design the infrastructure. So this is, to me, the virtuous circle where we have these positive feedbacks, and it seems that people are happy with this kind of construction. Now, the threat for us, LTSER community, is to have broken links. And the next slide shows that from the research network to research infrastructure, we are not in the same position, because many of my colleagues, they are high-profile researchers, they tell me, okay, my already high-impact research does not need this kind of array. I don't care about this. I just look at my CV, look at all my papers, I'm happy with that, and I am recognized by the research performing organization for the job I've already done. So I don't need your research infrastructure. Or the other message is I have no time or no skills to contribute to this research infrastructure. So we are in a situation where this link is broken and the other link is also broken, because the services provided this by the RI, because it is not correctly fed by researcher, is not providing the good services. So the question to me is whether we are able to overcome this difficulty for our science, our world system approach, or critical zone science, or whether we are lost, we are getting lost with that. So that's to me a key question. Other threats, building this LTSER RI at constant budget. I think we will also elaborate a little bit with this, probably with the discussion. There is also the question of responding to short-term demand from stakeholders and trying to develop high impact research. Sometimes it's difficult to reconcile these two elements, okay? And we were discussing about that with Gilles yesterday. So for some colleagues, there is a difficulty to be very responsive, short-term response to this demand and doing their best to produce a high-quality research, okay? The other problem we are facing is, or the risk we are facing is to have a two-tiered system, because we will enter a phase of labeling of sites, of LTSER sites, and the outcome of this is that we will have insiders and outsiders. And we need to find a good way to have all people, all sides on board somehow, even if we won't be able to label all the OSCAR sites and all the LTSER platform of ZEDA for budget reason, for financial reasons. So, and we need to find the good way to have all people on board, even if there will be this distinction. And so this is also a major threat, I think. We can discuss about that. To conclude, because we are a bit late, I think, I was thinking, this night, we were on the same boat yesterday, not a boat, a barge, as you say, a barge. And there is maybe something related to LTR construction. First, we decided to go on board, so we are on a track, and we cannot escape from the track, okay? We are along the Seine, and there is no way to escape. Or if you want to escape, it will be costly or dangerous, okay? So we have to follow the track, okay? This is the first message. The second message is that the temporal scheme is constrained as well. Because you cannot say, okay, oh, I see Tour Eiffel, I want to stop, we'll have more photos. No, the boat, the barge is keeping his own speed, and you cannot do that. So the temporal is also, the time scale is very constrained. So second message. The third message is a little bit pessimistic, but we had a good time discussing together, drinking wine and so on, discussions. But we started from point A and we turned to point A. So that... But anyway, we were all on board, and probably we need other people to be on board. That's also a message. Yeah, we need to account for these different messages, I think. My conclusion also is to say we need to have more people engaged in the LTSER RI construction. So for sure, we are too few people, and it's the same in other countries. But really, in France, it's the case. We need more people to be engaged in the RI development. And also the other message, we need to have a strong, high-level, strategic, strong support from research performing organization. So. Jérôme has been talking about CNRS and so on, but we need this strong support, and we need a clear and strong feedback from these RPOs on the first project we have been shown, we have been constituted. So this is really an urgent need for us, because if we don't have this support, kind of guarantee that we are on the right track, people will be discouraged very rapidly. So we absolutely need this. Jérôme?
Thank you.